Hello, everybody. We are so excited to see everybody here today. We we come to you directly from Japan. It's 2 in the morning here for us. So if we are a little slow, that's why today. Just giving that disclosure. And we go ahead and introduce ourselves. You wanna go first?
I can go first for sure. My name is Gladys Lopez. I am officially in my third year of the doctoral program at Antioch University in Seattle, the Counseling, Education, and Supervision. I am officially a doctoral candidate. I have completed my comps, so that's where we're at. I um, am licensed in California as a licensed professional clinical counselor, but am currently practicing in Japan. I work for the Navy, and am the interim counseling advocacy supervisor for Fleet and Family here in Sasebo, Japan. And what I'm going to say a little bit about Naya and I's connection is I am a year ahead of her in the program. We met almost, a year ago now at one of our residencies and have continued to build the relationship, being the only Latinas in our cohort. Um, it's been good to have someone to talk to and kind of connect. Um, and definitely, we made it happen that we were both going to be in Japan at the same time for this symposium. So it was important that we be here together to present and have a conversation with you all.
Amazing. I am so glad to be here. And I'm Naya, she, her. I am a second year student at Antioch in the CS program, the Counselor Education and Supervision. I am a licensed mental health counselor in Washington State, and I am an OCD therapist there. So I work at a group practice in Washington State while I'm doing my doctoral program. And I also will be a research fellow in a week. So I'm excited about the new journey ahead. Yeah, and today we're excited about talking about our experiences as doctoral students and as Latinas in the program, and hopefully to answer your questions as well. If you have questions about what it's like to be in a doctoral program, in case you are considering or having thoughts about joining a program, I hope that this session is helpful to you as well in that way.
So at any time, if there's a question or anything that pops up, please take yourself off mute. You're not at any point will we feel interrupted. It is 2 a.m. here, so we are a little slower than usual, probably because we didn't sleep much. So, and we both had a full day of different things, I guess,
Life.
yesterday. Um, but first thing we wanted to kind of talk about was what attracted us to the CES program at Antioch. Um, in particular, for me, one of the main things that attracted me was the fact that the program was grounded in social justice practices. It's part of the mission of the program and the school, the university as a whole. And for the probably the biggest one was the ability for the program to be online. Classes take up one day out of the week for you, so you do have the capacity to work. Um, you have the capacity to work. Sometimes that capacity was stretched to the max because of the workload. But definitely those were two of the things that attracted me to the program.
Mm, yeah. I think for me, similar, I was considering going into a doctoral program, and when I researched, I was trying to be realistic with my timeline and things like that, and understanding. I'm Brazilian, and I did my undergrad in Brazil. So when I immigrated to the United States in 2016, I had to understand the educational system and the difference between psychology and counselor and what were the requirements for counseling in the States. Um, and licensure. So I was trying to understand what is the difference between going into clinical psych versus counseling psych versus counselor ed. So I was navigating all of that, and counselor education seemed to align really well with my goals and having a timeline that was manageable with the 3 years doctoral program. After I already completed a master's program, so that was really attractive. And Antioch specifically was one of those schools that was really, it seemed to be very committed to social justice and um, multicultural counseling in general. It wasn't just a statement in the mission of the school
Mhm.
versus others. It seemed like every page or every topic they made a point to say the social justice aspect, and that was really important to me when I made the decision for sure.
I definitely think that I fell in love with Antioch as a school um, through their play therapy program. That's how I was introduced to Antioch. And that kind of gave me a stepping stone into I was gonna find a program that fit what kind of my goals were. But the other aspects of the program kind of sold me as a whole, for sure, on why I decided for Antioch. Um, the doctoral part of it, it was always just a part of what was going to happen for me. Even though I am first generation in my family to have a secondary education, that was just a goal that was out there. I didn't know how it was going to happen, but it was going to happen because it was just going to happen. It was a marker, and it was definitely I didn't know when or where or how, but I knew that it was going to happen because that goal had been set a long time ago by 5-year-old Gladys. um, I think one of the definite reasons why I continue to be in the counseling profession and B, continued with my program is that dedication to the work, opening up mindsets, looking at situations in a different way, and um, social justice and liberation has just become part of my daily work, not just as a clinician, but as an educator and as a supervisor. Um, and every day it's a struggle to keep that at the forefront of my work. And what I mean by that is that I struggle every day to make sure that um, that is part of who I am and how I look at the world and how I look at the counseling world in particular. And it's a struggle because not everyone believes in social justice and liberation work. And it's just something I continuously have to bring to the forefront. So I don't know if any of what we're discussing is, oh, here we go. Oh, thank you for that. Um, I will definitely reach out, Kat. Oconus has been an interesting thing to get used to. So that's living outside of the continental US. And actually it was a struggle with my timeline for my program, for sure. Um, I can be really honest. I came to Japan with an open heart and open arms about the work that I was going to do. And when I got here, everything kind of changed. And it kind of threw a wrench in my program for sure. Uh, and I keep, definitely try to keep an open perspective. And more importantly, my commitment to work with military families and sailors still continues to be at the forefront of what I do every day. So they are continuously a part of my everyday work. Um, but definitely being outside of the continental US definitely changed how I had to do my doctorate program, definitely. So thank you for that.
Can either of you speak to the impacts of being multilingual in Antioch courses? I'm the university director of writing support, so I'm always really concerned about how we can best support our students who are multilingual and culturally diverse, but also how we can help make change in the institution as a whole in terms of how we approach linguistic justice and code meshing and honoring student voices, particularly in large projects like a dissertation, which are so individual. So I would love to hear a little bit of your experience as multilingual students.
Oh, that's a great point. I think for me, I came into this, not this country, in the US in 2016, and my journey through my master's program was so that you have to take a English test to be able to attend to begin with. So it's very textbook and you study very intensely. And academia has a way of almost like in my experience has a formal like a specific way that you're supposed to write and that you were expected to express yourself that's very neutral, very direct, and all of those things that didn't necessarily align with cultural values in that sense. But what I've noticed is that, well, we adapt, right? Because that's what we do as immigrants. Most of us, like, we just adapt to whatever is expected of us. Um, I noticed myself explaining myself a lot to my professors, having to disclose that, hey, by the way, English is my second language, just so you know, having other people checking on my work for me. So assignments would take longer for sure, just because I will need somebody to read it for me and see if that makes sense, these kinds of things until I had a better sense of what I was trying to express. Um, I do remember reading articles, it would take longer, and until I got habituated with the language, habituated with the process. One of the things that I really appreciated is the space. Whenever we are, that doesn't happen all the time, but when it happens, I really, really appreciate. So, for instance, if we're sharing something or if a professor asks something in the classroom, to have that 10 seconds, where we pause and then we can formulate our answer in our minds and then speak, because you can have a great, even I guess for native speakers, like, sometimes you need that time. And I've noticed myself, I was really hard on myself in the beginning because while somebody would bring something, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I wanted to say this, this, and that. And I was formulating my answers. And then while I was doing all of that, the class already went on, and then my point didn't matter anymore. And I was like, oh, I missed my opportunity and didn't participate. So now I'm here and I didn't say what I needed to say. So now my participation is less. And, how do I insert myself in this conversation? I think is really hard for me to interrupt people and to really be assertive sometimes. I really needed that quiet time to, gently snuggle my way in. Um, I appreciated also sometimes assignments were not, again, not very often, but sometimes assignments had a different format that you
Mm-hmm.
could turn in. So sometimes writing is good because it gives you time and gives times for other people to check, but sometimes you could also do a video,
Mm-hmm.
and I really appreciate that as well. Sometimes you could just record yourself and your flow and submit that as an assignment for certain assignments, and I really like that as well. So just having options and understanding that we are translating things in our minds and we can practice, but having that space, we might not want to use that space all the time, but having it is really, really important. That was really important for me.
So I think for me, one of the things that really stands out is that when I get any sense of emotion or any sense of feelings or anything, automatically my brain starts to think and speak and want to express itself in Spanish. That's my native language, my first language. And when there have been situations in the classroom, in particular, where um, there's a frustration, a moment of frustration, or a moment of where my thought process might be a little bit slower. Um, Unfortunately, because no one else in the classroom speaks Spanish, I don't just have the ability to open up and have the full conversation in Spanish like I normally would want to. Um, with writing, one of my most difficult things for that I see is that um, I sometimes write like I speak because that's just how that's how my brain wants to do it. And to tell my brain another thing at 2 or 3 in the morning when I'm writing something, because that's the time that I'm writing something, unfortunately, gets really difficult. So having that second set of eyes, having that support embedded would also be great. Um, start for any of those of you that are thinking about engaging in the doctoral program, start building those support systems now. And I think at schools, that is something that is available, but it's missing. And also, are we understanding that maybe the students that we're engaging with necessarily might not have a learning disability, but they might have a disadvantage of English not being their first language. It doesn't matter how long I've been speaking English, I've been speaking Spanish longer. So thank you. I hope we answered.
Thank you. That is so great. And I think that the advice that you're giving about like start building your support systems early, like that's so important. Like, we work with the Writing Center, and so we're trying to expand services, but we also want to make sure that when we are expanding services, we're keeping students' actual schedules and timelines and needs in mind. Um, but I love what you said about, these non-written options and like ability to choose, because that works so well for like multilingual, but also neurodivergent, and just what you're doing in your daily life. Like most of the time, like I'm in academia and I don't spend most of my time writing. It's mostly doing presentations and things like that, or developing handbooks, like kind of practical things.
Yeah, definitely. I think that we sometimes that's so in my space where I've taught, I think that opening up my mindset to what is considered to be an assignment has really opened up the ability for me to be a better educator. And definitely I would say that the last year of my program, professors were opening up your ability to turn in assignments in a different manner other than written. Not only am I bilingual, but I'm also neurodivergent. I'm dyslexic. So 99% of the time I'm thinking faster than I'm speaking or even writing. So that's also a challenge that it's just another layer of who I am and how I got here.
Great.
Yeah.
I think what I was curious about this group before we go into like more experiences and more specific things about our experience as doctor students is if you guys could type it in the chat who is already enrolled, if there are people here enrolled in doctoral programs already, or if you are thinking about it, just so we know. If you mind like just saying like thinking about it or already enrolled, or if you're enrolled like in a master's program too, just so you can type it in the chat just so we know. Um,
Mm, that's awesome.
that is
So we're getting your responses in, and definitely when I think especially when we're in that process of thinking about it, um you get these special little like butterflies of like, is this an option? Is this something that can happen? I talk about it a lot in all of my processes that I've had these past almost 3 years. And I didn't know how I was going to get here, but I knew I was going to get here, right? Some of that is resiliency. Some of that is connected to my culture. And some of that is just connected to that want, right? I'm a child of immigrants. My parents immigrated to this country um, almost 50 years ago now, for both of them, fairly close, almost 50 years ago. And knowing and having their backing, right, of like, for them, it was like, you're gonna pursue education. We don't know what you want to do. And when I came back and said it was going to be counseling, there was some interesting feedback of like, you're going to talk to people. Yes, I'm going to talk to people. Um, and not really understanding what it means still. They just come up with a word that they feel comfortable explains what I do on an everyday basis, um, when they explain what I do. But I think I can remember to being 5 years old and saying I wanted to be a doctor. Obviously, I didn't know. I probably was thinking like medical doctor. I don't know why. I'm scared of blood and don't do well with messes. So, obviously, that's a good thing that I'm not a medical doctor. But I was 5 years old, and reflecting back on these last 2 years, my parents are so extremely proud of what I've done, right? Um, my mom came to this country as a 15-year-old. She did not continue her education. Um, she has an amazing life education and one of the best work ethics that I know in my life. My dad did finish high school education here in the US. Um, but their tenacity and their want for my sister and I to do something more than they did was so strong that there was, at the point of starting, there was never going to be a turning back, even though we can both share that we've probably both had some interesting interactions that weren't so pretty in doctorate programs, that included microaggressions, that included instances of really questioning, are we going to continue this process? But at no point have we ever really given up. I think we've found our spaces where we can have discussions and further those thought process of where when we question it. Um, and it's all part of that work that I talk about, right? It's that daily waking up every day and saying, I'm going to work through it. It's not easy. It's not fun all the time. But when it's so good and when you see the impact, it makes up for all the messiness that I've encountered these past 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see on the chat, people considering, people already in grad school, and somebody also asking for proactive considerations, right? The master students could start taking. And I can speak a little bit about that in the context of our community. I think the end of the day, um, for myself, and similar to what Gladys was sharing, there is this big sense of responsibility to our communities because there aren't many of us. In our program, for example, it's just two of us, and then there's one more person who identify as Latinx in the whole program. So there's that sense of responsibility to our community. We know that there aren't many of us. If we have the chance, if we have the opportunity, it's almost like that sense of, well, I'm doing it for my community too, right? I represent my community when I am in certain spaces of privileged spaces. So there is that background sense of responsibility. And I think for both of us, we didn't have anybody who've been through the program, who've been through the process of a doctoral program or even a master's program. So you have to learn a lot of things and research a lot of things on your own. And I think to say one proactive thing that you all are doing is attending the Zoom meeting, right? To talk about the prospect of being, because we didn't even do that in back when we were thinking about applying. And that was one of the motivations that we thought, oh, maybe we talk about this, what would be good to know. And I think for me, thinking about what made a difference for me in terms of practical things was the timeline I was mentioning. How long do I have to dedicate to a program was very important to me. Do I have 6 years? Do I have 3 years? Like, what is my timeline? What do I want to do with this degree was another thing that I considered. Do I want to teach? Do I just want to work in a lab? Like, or, what are the things that I want for myself? Those are things that I sat down and I thought, okay, let's consider career-wise. Like, what do I see myself? Um, and then once I figured those questions first, I looked through the programs available to me, right? Do I want to work and study? Because I didn't have the financial ability to just study. So Antioch allowed me to work and study. So I really wanted that as well. And then what are the programs committed to? What are the missions? Things like that. And then once I figured all this funnel questions, right? I boiled down to the program and the type of school and the type of format that I wanted. I could understand what the schools were looking for in a candidate. And for example, Antioch was really committed to social justice. So in my application, I needed to portray that as well, right? How am I committed to social justice? What does that mean? Do I have an understanding of that, what that means? What are the things that are connected with social justice that I can link already, that I did either in my master's program or in my life in general? Because I feel like academia also has academia considers certain types of things valuable, right? But sometimes we have other experiences, other life experiences that we might not think that we're taught that doesn't count as valuable, but they are valuable. So just being, for one example, is like I am a older sister, and to me that's like an example of leadership because I had to do a lot of those strategic thinking and a lot of organizing. So talking about that, maybe I wasn't a leader as the Western privileged kind of power system, but I was an older sister, and in my culture that's really, really important. That's a very important role, and linking those things in my application, that was really, I think it made a difference. um, and it was true to myself. So thinking about those more practical things, those are some things. Yeah.
I would say one consideration that we all have to remind ourselves is that this is gonna be difficult in a very different way than you expect. You are gonna lose time with your family. Let's be real. You are gonna lose time with your friends. So making sure that you're open and you have these conversations about what the commitment of your program is going to be and where other people around you are going to have to pick up the weight that you normally hold. Particularly one of the things that Naya just mentioned, it's a leadership skill to be the first in your family to go to college. Even if you're somewhere in the middle of, for example, for me on my mom's side, 51st cousins, I'm in the middle, but I'm the first, right? So even if you're not the oldest, that is still also a leadership skill, and you have that ability to set a path forward, right, that hasn't been set before. But also, a really important thing is to start building that community and those people that are going to be able to come forth and help you out, right? And what I mean by that is I once I was in my program, I was able to meet people and build a community, but also my community that supports me on the outside. Like I'm unmarried, but I have an amazing family, right? So like my mom and my sister and my other family members, making sure that they knew that Mondays were off limit, but they always made sure I had food and I was fed and I had a coffee pot going so I could make it through my 7-8 hour day on Monday. That was just school, right? Um, uh, Something basic like that is something important to take into consideration. And also taking into consideration that as a Latina, Latino, Latinx individual, you will most likely be the only one in your cohort. We've seen it over and over again. I'm in year 3, about to enter year 3. Naya's about to enter year 2, and Douglas is in year 1. And this is our program specifically, but it's 3 of us, right? And there's about currently of those 3 cohorts, we're looking at about 60 to 70 people. So very low percentage. So you're gonna have to look elsewhere to build that community, like places like this, the Latinx Symposium, the Latinx Institute at Antioch University as a whole, or any other university. You have to do some of that digging and research yourself. It's not impossible, right? It's very possible. It is hard, but it's very possible. Si se puede, se va a poder. No es algo nuevo. It's nothing new, right? We've all been in spaces where we've been told we don't fit in and we've made room for ourselves. So you can very much so make room for yourself in a doctorate program.
Yeah, it's coming to mind the idea of, oh, we all have seats on the table. Sometimes, and I heard that from a professor once, and we might not have seats at the table, so we have to like bring our own seat to the table and sort of like make space because the table is not made for us, and you might not have space for us, so you have to sort of like squeeze your way in, but it's possible. It just, of course, takes a lot of extra work that you guys are probably already familiar with. I hope that was helpful for the person who asked, Melissa. Um, yeah, and we want to know if there are any more questions. Please let us know. We can always keep talking about our stories, as you know, we love some stories and storytelling. But please, we have lots. But please let us know if you have more specific questions or any thoughts or yeah.
I think one thing that I do want to share with you guys is that as Latinas in this space, but other Latinos, we find that there are moments where we sit back, right, and we try to listen and take into space what it's like to be in a doctoral program. We both did that. But I think one of the things that brought us together was those experiences where we've had to kind of start cracking through that wall of what this space looks like, who it's meant for, and how we're coming through in it. One question that just came in that I kind of want to pay attention to, because again, my brain going everywhere, is Jessica just wrote about thoughts about finding working with your advisor. So I have a very interesting story about me finding and working with my advisor, and then I'm gonna let you speak.
Sounds good.
But a year into my program, when I applied for this program, we were kind of assigned advisors. And so I actually got to build a really great relationship with my first advisor. He worked really well with me. And then unfortunately, he decided to leave the program and go back into do, clinical work. Unfortunately for us, fortunate for him, because he's doing what he loves to do, which again, that's a big part of this, is you got to do what you love to do. And at that moment, I again was assigned an advisor, and I had already met most of the staff and faculty that were part of my program after a year being in the program. And what I had to do at that moment is do a lot of self-advocating and petition to have someone else be my advisor, because I knew what the type of support I was going to need going into the next 2 years of this program. And I made it very clear that I knew this person could provide the support, because by that time I had already had almost every single faculty member or adjunct that we had available teach me. So in seeing those spaces, seeing what I was being offered and what I was going to lose, because he really was really a great advisor, I needed to make sure I wasn't going to lose the ability to have the same level of support. So self-advocacy is a really big tool. The faster you get comfortable with it, the faster you learn it, and the faster you engage with it within the spaces, especially in a doctoral program, the better things will go for you. I've been a student and a person that kind of is like, well, that's just how it is. And I started getting really anxious about what those last 2 years were going to look like. And I was like, I think this is when I'm going to use my voice and say, I'm not cool. I need a different person. And these are the reasons why. So, I say that if your program initially does kind of what our program does, which is select your advisor, if there's something not working, speak up, ask for help. Ultimately, this is your experience, and you have a voice, and you need to use it. It's been wonderful. My advisor for the last year, probably almost year and a half, because at the end she kind of took me under her wing, is Stephanie Olsen Thorson, who is a faculty member of our, and I think did I transfer her last names?
Mm-hmm.
I did. It's Thorson Olsen. Dyslexia again. She is amazing. I could text her right now. Probably not right now. She probably wouldn't, because she probably has a very important thing. But I could text her and tell her I needed anything, and she would make room for me in her schedule. Particularly in most recent months with the difficulties of moving overseas. She really made this program doable. She made my goals a priority, and she's helped me really find where I wanted to go with this whole program. So it's been great.
Yeah. I think for me, I know I love everything that you said, and I think for me, one of the things I would add is that we are all trying to build our village, and add people that we might, like to collaborate with or work well with. Because in the beginning, we might really not know what we need. As you fresh start your program, you might not know what you need, what kind of support you need, what kind of things you should be doing or looking forward to. And for me, I had several advisors and supervisors and all those people that mentors that I work with, and I learned something
Hello.
from them.
Yes.
Oh.
Did someone have a question?
No.
Oh.
I think we had an open mic issue there.
Okay. No worries. So I've learned something from them, but I also learned what I needed, and I got to know a little bit more of myself. So for instance, personalismo, right? Like one of our cultural values was really important to me. So I really wanted somebody to work with me as my advisor who understood my cultural values. So, you don't have to know everything, and we are all a heterogeneous group and everybody's different. I get that. But if you don't understand that I might need a call or I might need a video instead of just an email, that would be really difficult for me. Like there are certain things that I really value, and if I need a meeting, it cannot be just an email. Maybe we schedule a time to have a chat, to meet, or to have that person to person contact. That was really important to me. And if an advisor doesn't have time for me in that sense, never have time. I understand that everyone is busy, but that would clear to me, okay, that person doesn't understand some important core values for me, even though I already talked about collectivism or talked about some cultural values, and it doesn't really seem like they're getting. That was a sign for me that, hey, maybe I need to speak up here and look for something else, which is really hard to do. It was really hard to do because I think academia teaches how to, there's this underlying message that you should be grateful because you shouldn't even be here. So you should just be grateful and take whatever is given to you. Right. So it's like, wait, I shouldn't be complaining because I already made it. Right. So I should just work with anybody. And it's like, no, I have a right to be here and I work really hard to be here. And I want my advisor to be in alignment with what I need to.
Just to kind of add to that, it's being a year ahead of Naya. Sometimes I'm like, no, you have to go bother them. Go, no, you're on it, And I think that's one of the great things about connection, right? I think that's a really big part of, for any of you that are working in programs right now, is making sure that those marginalized students have the ability to connect with each other and make them aware of who and what is available for even just a little bit of mentorship, or just a shoulder to kind of have available for you is really important. I definitely think that for myself, I'm an extrovert, so I was gonna find people because I was just gonna find them because that's just what we do. We find people and kind of gravitate to each other and start building from within, you know, what maybe our program can't offer us all the time. But definitely knock on those Zoom room doors, reach out through email, ask for a face-to-face or even a space in the same space. That was one of the things that we took into consideration in presenting today, is we wanted to make it possible to be in the same space while we were presenting for you. Seeing two Latinas that are both going through it is a really powerful message, and it can really impact what any of you all take from this.
Yeah, and I am an introvert myself as well. So I am there with you and noticing that it's okay if I do like one call per week or, reach out to one person a week, that's enough. I don't have to be like on all the time. I don't have to not be myself because it's very difficult.
We are reading one of the, yes, Melissa, I firmly stand on that. Mentorship and connection. That is probably what has had us be at the verge of almost completing this program and continuing to support the program, continuing to be active in the program. I think that is a space where all programs can grow in, is making those connections, setting up those places of where maybe you have a doctoral student in their third year, mentor somewhere in their first year or second year, first year, you know, and letting them have the ability to build that connection can really impact their ability to complete a program. Naya and I met almost 2 years into my program, and it was like their very first, like their third week in school, and it was like a minute meeting. We just had like a minute, right? And then we continued to have the ability to connect in different settings. And then in the following residency, it was an hour meeting almost every day. And then just continuing to build that connection. Yes, ma'am. I see.
Saying bye. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't, again, you're talking about being the only one in a lot of spaces, and I think connections with other students of color is also very, very valuable. If you don't have another Latino, Latinx person in the room, I had like a nice spot at Gladys, and we already do, like that's it. That's just the two of us in the room. That created an opportunity for us to connect, but in my own cohort, I have other students. I have other students of colors that I connected with. We don't share the cultural aspect, but we share some identities, and that's really, really helpful because sometimes it can feel really isolated that we're alone in this process. That maybe we're, oh, am I gaslighting myself that this is happening or not happening? And then having somebody else that you can talk to and sort of validate your experience is really helpful in maintaining you because you're thinking about joining it. We're also thinking ahead of like how can you finish the program? Like what are the things that will keep you in the program?
I will definitely say that's a big part of why I've made it through these 2 years, right? I found my community within my cohort. And they are two people that allow me to continue to do this work, and continue to push. me in the spaces where I'm uncomfortable to grow when I need that push. But I also think that I'm very lucky that I did get to meet Naya, and we have built this, and now we can add more people to it to continue to grow the ability to connect. Within your cohort, you're going to need that support. Outside of your cohort, you're going to need that support. I think throughout this conversation, we've talked about support and like building your community because it's so important. Even though 99% of the time, my parents and my family don't understand what I'm talking about when I'm frustrated with an assignment or whatever it might be, just having them sit there and say, my mom, her thing is always, I'm gonna make you a tea because you sound nervous, so I'm gonna make you a tea. Or my dad just sitting there and listening to me and saying, you got this, really makes a difference for me. So again, build your community, reach out to us. We'll make sure that you can get our contact information so that if you have any other questions or any comments or anything else, we can continue to be supportive to our community.
Yeah, you now know us, and we are here to support you in any way that we can, and we'd love to build community as well. So I'm sure we can also put our email in the chat, and then if you have any questions that you want to direct us, please let us know. So do to
You can also put your contact information into the lobby chat within the platform too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that, Ingrid. We'll make sure we do that.
Here's mine, and here's Gladys. And if somebody has any final questions or comments, also feel free to unmute yourself and just ask anything. We hope to it's as much of a conversation as Zoom can allow, of course.
And we do thank you all for attending.